I noticed that I don't have very much battery, so we might not, so we might not get, oh, there we go. We might not get all the way through class today, which is fine, because my main priority is just to take a look at Lab 6. So has anybody looked at Lab 6 yet? Couple people. Great. So I think I do really want to talk about Lab 6 because I don't want anybody doing too much work, getting confused and doing too much work on Lab 6. So really all you need to do is change existing code to be generic. You don't need to, think about actually implementing swapping. So I'll just grab this code and I'm going to move it over to, I have a Lab 6. I'm going to make a new package, Lab 6 temp, and I'm going to make a new class, and it's going to be integer swapper. And let me paste this in, Lab 6 temp. Okay. So let's go back to the instructions. Okay, so first you're just going to really quickly write a movie class. I guess, let's step back. So the big idea is that we have this class integer swapper, and it already works great, implemented nicely by the book, I believe. And so let's run it even. I guess we don't use integer swapper, but we could use integer swapper and it would run just fine. And you might want to do that to start off. But as it's implemented, we can only take in an array of ints, or actually of integers. And we want to make it so that this method is generic. It can be used for any type of array. And that's why we first need to make ourselves a movie class, so that we can practice. We can make ourselves an array of movies, and we can test out our generic swapper on our array of movies. So that's part one, nice little warm up. And then once we've done that, we want to change this method to be generic. So we saw in class that to make a whole class generic, we saw how to do that, but for the lab, you are going to make just a method generic, and there is an example of this code here. And so this is just an example of making a method generic. You don't need to, this actually reverses an array, but you don't need to reverse an array. You don't need to do anything. You just need to make very slight changes to this code so that it is generic. And then you also need to handle exceptions. And so there's actually some, and then make a nice demo, but there's some guidance on that as well. Let's see. I guess one thing, okay, so you might notice that this method is static. And so what does it mean when it's static? It means when we call it, we use the name of the class. So generic swapper.swap. Instead of making a swapper, if it wasn't static, if swap wasn't static, what we would do would be something like generic swapper. Swapper is new generic swapper, and we'd call the constructor, and then we'd have to do swapper.swap, and we would pass in whatever we pass in. But it is static, and so we call it just from the name of the class. Okay, so because I am a little worried about my 3% battery on my laptop, and my plan for class was to use my iPad, and I realized that I only have a USB to USB-C, or USB to Lightning, or whatever. Basically, technology is not helping me today. We can end class here, and so I will post Project 3 tomorrow. I was looking at my current plan for it, and I think it's a little complicated, so I want to make that more manageable. And I will see you on Wednesday, and we'll talk about Project 3 and move on to some new content.